It's the Dark Reading News Desk. I'm Terry Sweeney, contributing editor with Dark Reading, and I'm joined now by John Bennett, Senior Vice President and General Manager of Identity and Access Management for LogMeIn. John, a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Terry, great to be here.
Let's start with some context. What are some of the biggest challenges right now to managing identity, and what are the risks of not managing it? Well, let's take those one at a time.
Yeah, I think there's probably two or three key factors around what's going on in terms of the modern workforce and managing identity today. And the first, if you think about it, is that identity today it's about each of us, right? It's the unique behaviors we bring into the workplace, the personal devices, the applications that we need access to, and the attributes, where we're accessing the network from. And so I think that's one. It's different. If we think about that, somebody in IT has a whole different set of applications that they need access to than someone in legal or care or sales. And so for IT, the challenge I think in managing identity today with the modern workforce is, how do you sort of increase security posture for the company because of the rise of cybersecurity threats, along with providing sort of a user experience that allows the workforce to get to those applications and get their work done.
Okay, in that vein, LastPass has historically been known as a password management solution, but you guys have recently expanded the portfolio into something you call identity as a service, which is pretty great, and you've aimed this at small and mid-sized businesses. Why the expansion, and why focus on SMBs in particular?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. For over a decade, LastPass has been helping millions of consumers and thousands of businesses secure their passwords, have better password hygiene, and protect their digital assets. And we purposely built our product for small and medium businesses because we felt that that was an underserved part of the market, and that it had to be easy for them to purchase, to deploy, to manage, and for their employees to adopt. One of the things we heard from businesses was that putting a password management in place was kind of their first step in managing employee identity. And as they started looking at having a more complete solution, as they looked at the plethora of solutions out there, most of them are built for large enterprises, and they're complex and they're expensive. So the other part of that is we then sort of looked at that and said, this is an underserved part of the market. They really want a holistic solution, an all-in-one solution. And that's where we added single sign-on and multi-factor authentication to deliver an all-in-one identity as a service. We sell to businesses of all sizes, sure, but we really believe that the mid-enterprise market and SMBs, that's how we want to design our products. Like, we want them easy for IT administrators to use and live in, and that employees are going to love the experience.
And is part of the demand from that market segment also compliance-driven?
I think there's a couple components to that. In some of the verticals, certainly that we're in, there's a compliance, whether that's GDPR or new compliance standards in California, or they're in healthcare or finance or legal. But the other thing is that a third of all small and medium businesses in 2019 suffered some level of a data breach. And so the other thing is that they're really viewing this also as like continuity of business. Like a lot of these businesses can't recover if they have a serious breach, right? Sure. They have agencies that show up and say, you can't open your door for business. And so a lot of, I think, what's also driving this with small and medium businesses, they're also now becoming aware that it's a real significant risk to their business in terms of loss of employee data or customer data or other sort of events that could affect their business in a meaningful way.
Okay. It feels relevant to bring up single sign-on here. Most popular websites and services lack out-of-the-box support for SSO. What do you advise businesses in that instance?
Yeah, so single sign-on, I think it is a really valuable part of an identity and access management solution, because again, what single sign-on does, it allows employees to access applications and services on the network with one set of credentials, right? So that's great. So you're reducing the number of passwords. Passwords, still 80% of breaches are from weak or compromised credentials. And so I think, single sign-on is that's a great sort of component. But there's hundreds of websites and applications that we as employees live in that IT doesn't have integrated with their SSO solution. So what we really see is that by having a single sign-on solution plus a password manager, you're managing the IT applications that they know about or they've integrated. And you're also then managing all those applications, the passwords and the credentials and the access through a password manager. So then you're providing sort of protection over all the access points. So that's going to increase your security, and it's also going to reduce the number of passwords floating around in the organization, which is a good thing. And it's also going to allow you to have security policies in place so that you can make sure that the passwords that they are using meet the criteria of the business.
Okay. I'm struck by the reality that a comprehensive identity management solution has to, in this instance, satisfy both the requirements of the IT staff, but also not be so clunky that end users, are turned off by it. So this must be a regular challenge for you guys, like how to manage IT's demands against keeping it simple enough for very non-technical users to still be able to play with it. How do you balance those objectives?
Yeah, I think there's really three ways that we balance that. One is that we're really rigorous about staying true to who we're designing the product for, which is that mid-enterprise and small business users, and that consumer experience. And I think the one piece that we're bringing is by bringing a comprehensive solution to the workplace, but doing it in a way where we're providing granular control for the IT, but we're doing it in a way where it's easy for them to have complete control over the passwords and how the passwords are being used across the organization, how they're being shared, and the type of reporting that they need if it's a compliance issue or other things.
Sure.
But on the other side, it's all about employee adoption, employee education. And that's an area, I think, because we have millions of consumers that use the product, there's that benefit in terms of that consumer experience and how we can bring that into the workplace and provide that consumer experience for employees where it's very easy for them to use the tool and application. And I think that's the biggest thing is we have to be careful, I think, as a company in terms of we have customers of all sizes. We have large enterprises around the world using the product. We have over 61,000 businesses. But we don't want to create this bespoke solution that becomes overly complex for both IT and for employees. And I think that's kind of the balance is we've got to deliver a strong security posture for IT, but we've got to stay true to delivering that great user experience.
Friendly
interface. Yeah.
You guys also recently launched a passwordless login experience for business users. I mean, the ubiquity and the just unrelenting nature of passwords, like they're for everything. Can passwords ever truly be replaced?
Yeah, I think passwords. Passwords such like we could spend an hour on that. We won't. But they predate computers. They predate the internet. There's going to be a long tail. I think in the workplace, there's always going to be use cases where IT is going to have to manage passwords behind the scenes. But I think what you are seeing now is that you can do that in a way where you can provide a passwordless experience to employees so that whether it's getting onto their workstation or into the applications or on a VPN, that they can now do that through native biometric authentication in the devices or through SSO or federated identity integration. So I think we're now seeing a trend where you will see that for the employee, passwords will move to the background. IT is still going to have to be able to manage those in the background.
Sure. Okay. John, something else I wanted to ask you about was multi-factor authentication versus second-factor authentication. I think there's a lot of confusion, certainly among users, about which is which and which they're using. How do you approach that? How do you make that explanation to a customer or an end user? And what sorts of things should they look for as they consider maybe the trade-offs between them?
Yeah, I think it's we in this industry sometimes make things more complex than they need to be, and second factor or two-factor authentication, it's great if a business is using something, right? Like so, second factor is great, but it's a single static factor. A lot of times they're having their employees just go and use an application like a Google Authenticator or a Microsoft Authenticator. They don't have granular control over it. A lot of times it introduces friction. And again, it's a static single additional factor. What we advise our clients on multi-factor authentication, again, is multi-factor authentication is bringing at least 2 different factors. A lot of times it's about something you know, or it's a biometric in the device, or it's geolocation, so that it's contextual and it's adaptive and it is changing based on the user's behavior. So really proving that that person really is who you think they are, and you're going to allow them, grant them access. I think the other thing we advise them is a lot of these tools, they provide a more granular control, more robust reporting for the IT organization, so they're really able to understand what's going on with multi-factor authentication within the organization. We're seeing a huge uptick in the demand for this. About 50% of our customers now have some level of multi-factor authentication deployed, but only 15% actually mandate their employees use it.
Okay. John, let's finish by talking about recommendations that you might make to customers who are looking to overhaul their password and identity management infrastructure. What's top of mind there?
The one advantage that we have is because we have so many business customers that we learn a lot also from the process that our customers run in terms of evaluating a password management tool or identity as a service tool. And I think there's really like 4 things that we see that are in common with companies that really do this well. And the first is that they've set really clear goals within the organization, and they've sort of said this is what success is going to look like as we either evolve, replace, or put in a solution for the first time. I think the second thing is that there's a commonality in terms of that they're not just surveying the IT administration in terms of what are the tools and applications that are in place, but they're also surveying employees and power users, really understand like the baseline. And I think the third factor is that they're being realistic about their homegrown solutions or their on-premise solutions, and like how much of that do they want to bring forward with them, and how much complexity is that going to actually bring into getting a solution in place, getting it deployed in a timely manner. And then finally, I think this is one that really stands out for me, is that they really have an appropriate amount of time in terms of as they're going through the evaluation, that they're able to really make sure that as they're looking at the multiple vendors, do they really meet their use case, their needs? And so I think that period of time in terms of to be able to do a robust evaluation with end users and power users in the IT results in a successful project.
Great stuff, John. Thanks for joining us on News Desk today.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate it.
We've been talking with John Bennett of LogMeIn. This has been Terry Sweeney for Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us.